It's over the ocean.
Now let's see.
Jim, could you say something?
Still nothing.
Nothing. What about now? No, I'm not catching any feedback.
And mainly that will start though,
This is
because we don't want to keep people waiting either.
This is rough.
Just let me know. I'm happy to look at a chat or something. It's up to you all.
All right. I did hear you right about now.
Okay.
But I don't understand why I'm not catching the same feedback. I must have a faulty cable or something, and I cannot replace it right now.
Yeah.
It's always the same as the last minute, right? Everything works.
45 seconds. Where should I
About 40
put
seconds.
should I put any questions or comments in a chat somewhere, or what should I do?
Yeah, well, you can leave it in the studio chat then. Or just, we have a studio
Interesting.
chat, I think.
Interesting. We get the comments in the chat that Jim's mic is super clear. However, our mics are super loud and it hurts the ears.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because I cannot hear Jim.
Yeah, you're like totally overmodulated. Like,
So maybe the public can relay Jim's questions to us.
there you go.
Oh, there's another setting on the roadcaster.
What we can do with it.
We'll improvise.
Exactly. We'll do this the Agile way.
Right.
How are you doing, Jurgen?
Reasonably okay. As I just told you, I'm at the end of a 3-week cold. My forehead and ears are still half clogged. I'm coughing and sneezing my way through the day, but I think I'm there, nearly
Cool.
there.
At least your voice is not gone.
It's actually, I have heard several times people told me that I have a sexier voice when I have a cold. So I should count that as a blessing.
It's nice and suave.
Mhm.
Good that you're here. Good to see you, and especially given the fact that you're sick, that you still come up and that you're still here. I think it's a very nice topic that we're talking about today, handling the Agile crisis. It's an interesting thing because I don't know if it's just the economics in general, because I was just reading more messages like there are massive layoffs now in the gaming industry as well. 1,300 people got, or 1,900 even got laid off with Blizzard. Of course, there are the messages with Intel. All these large companies are massively laying off people. And we see a transition as well in Agile development, the whole Agile world. And I'm curious about your thoughts as well. What's going on?
Well, where do we start? Well, first of all, indeed, I see the messages on my LinkedIn stream all the time. Agile is dead. No, Agile is not dead. I contributed to that myself. I said Agile is not dead. It is dissolved. That is the metaphor that I used. We feel it around us, but we can't see it anymore. But it's still there. But it's not something we can touch anymore. To use that metaphor, others have contributed. Jim Highsmith has contributed to that. Scott Ambler had a nice article recently. He said the Agile is not dead. The Agile Gold Rush is dead.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought that was a good point that he made. So yeah, everyone is contributing to this Agile is dead meme. And there are definitely some things are dead. That's for sure. The question is, what exactly is it that is dead? How do we define that? Is that Agile, or is that something else that is dead? But you have a good point. Also, mass layoffs across the world, which is, I think, tangentially related to that.
Do you think those are because this happens frequently, right? In 2008, 2008, there was the economic crisis, mass layoffs. 2018, same thing, and now it's the same thing in this situation. And every time it's like, "Oh, what's going to happen to Agile? What's going to happen to Scrum Masters? Blah blah blah." And the least tangible roles and accountabilities are the ones who are hit first. So, do you think this is a fad? Do you think this is a new hype that just laying off or the Agile dead topic? I mean, there always are Agile is dead topics, but now it seems to be a little bit more hardening.
Yeah, this time it's for real, I think, because with previous crises, the financial crisis or whatever, it was another crisis that sort of touched Agile a bit, maybe had a bit of an impact. But the conferences and the community and so on, everything was still there. Coaches and consultants had jobs, but now it is the community itself.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I got 4 or 5 messages this week of meetups having downsized, conferences having stopped, podcasts. I'm not sure about yours. Fingers crossed, but podcasts seeing the decline in the number of listeners. People still live, so apparently they go elsewhere. And I have compared it before with the 90s. I'm so old that I remember what the 80s and the 90s looked like. I made a lot of money in the 90s training people how to use Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, and Access. I wrote programming in Excel courses and things like that. And also the basic courses, because there was a lot of demand. People had no idea how to work with computers. They had no idea how the internet works. So they went to 2-day classes to learn how to hold a mouse. You can't believe it these days, but we had to teach people how these things work. And yeah, that was booming business for a number of years. And then it was all dead. And not because the internet died or computers died. I mean, obviously we still use them, but people did not go to their classes anymore because they learned how this new world operated. The younger generations had no need for 2-day classes, and I had to look for another job. And I think that's a bit of the same now with the agile world. We were part of a generation that had to be taught how to be agile, and we went to 2-day classes to learn how to behave as a self-organizing team. But the younger generations, they won't need that. For them, it's perfectly obvious how all of that works.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I suppose we move on, and agile has become part of what we talk about and experience and breathe on a daily basis. That's why I said it has dissolved. It is still there in the air, but it's not a thing anymore that we concretely
Yeah.
work with.
And there's an interesting question now from Jim coming in as well. So, what do all these coaches and consultants need to do now? Do they need to learn new skills? Do they need to adapt? And I'm going to tie this into our conversation yesterday as well, Jim, with Chris Jones from the Silicon Valley Product Group, where he stated whether there was a question coming from the audience about whether product owners and product managers are going to be automated in 5 to 10 years. So, do these people need to learn new skills, or what's next?
Definitely will people have to learn new skills. I think the job of agile coach and agile consultant will probably cease to exist. It took maybe 2 decades. That's quite a long time, actually. If we look at AI prompt engineers, that job had a much shorter shelf life.
No, no.
Because it's already out of the out of the job boards. I think it existed for a year.
Max.
And yeah, these things happen because prompt engineering in itself is not a job anymore. Everyone will have to learn that as part of their conversations with AI. So everyone will have to learn how to be agile as part of their job, whether it's product managers or development engineers or whatever. And the agile coach as a separate role, or the scrum master as a separate role, I think that that will be behind us very soon.
What do you see as the impact of the whole agile? Well, the end of the gold rush. Let's stick to those words. I like the terminology, but I predominantly see a lot of people screaming and panic on LinkedIn, but I don't see the actual consequences yet. Apart from media coverage, I don't see it in my specific network. Sometimes people ask for, I need to find a new gig, and then they find a new gig, and that's pretty much it. So, what do you see as the longer term impact?
Well, I don't have the data. I don't do that kind of research. I just base my opinion on the biased signals that I that I see on my social media streams and in the conversations with people that I have. And I draw conclusions that seem logical to me. I mean, we have the famous hype cycle behind us. Basically, now we go to the trial of disillusionment.
Sure.
And that seems to be sort of a law with every new big thing. Same with AI, by the way. We just went beyond that summit of the hype. With generative AI is going to go into the trial of disillusionment as we speak. And then it will bounce back again. It will come up again, but not as high as it was before during the hype period. So people will panic. They will be anxious for a while. Jobs disappear, and I think, yeah, I've seen it. I've heard people say, I'm not promoting myself as agile coach anymore. I'm promoting myself as a way of working advisor or whatever. They're trying to get rid of the word agile because it doesn't sell. Companies want something else, even though they still need to know how to behave in a more agile way. Actually, the demand or the need has only gone up thanks to artificial intelligence. Companies have to adapt even faster, and this is not going to slow down. But the way we have been working for the last 20 years with standard frameworks and methodologies and so on that tell you thou shalt have a scrum master and a product owner, and thou shalt have sprints that last 1 to 2 weeks and so on. I think fortunately that we're going to leave behind us.
Do you think it's really the core of the work itself that will change, or is it the terminology that people are just getting sick of? Because this is a recurring topic in the last, let's say, 5 podcasts, maybe 6. I feel agile itself is not dead, but it's mostly the terminology, and people get whacked over the head so often with these kind of terms, and they have to, and indeed thou shalt have a scrum master, that it becomes very mechanical, very zombie-esque, instead of really honing the craft and doing what they're supposed to do.
Yep. Well, it comes back to how do you define it? How do you define agile? If we look at the Agile Manifesto and the values on the first page, that is obvious. That will never be cease to be true. Adapting to a changing environment and collaborating with customers and so on. The practices, however, and we find some practice actually among the principles on the second page, which, for example, say we satisfy customer through a frequent delivery. That goes actually more into the how, the how we want to live by those values on the first page. Well, the how is changing. The way we are trying to be agile, that is changing. So the toolboxes and the frameworks and so on, they will cease to exist or they will change. And I'm actually happy to see that there's a move to pattern libraries. I'm contributing that myself with the unfixed language, but there's also liberating structures and team topologies and many others, because people see that the fixed structures don't work anymore. We have to copy, paste, and borrow individual patterns and practices from several places and then adapt them to our context and then create our own framework, our own way of working, with the Lego blocks that we have stolen from various places. That is the way to go. And also invent our own way of doing things. I just read an article yesterday. I think Jeff Sutherland posted it on LinkedIn, of a team doing retros with a ChatGPT. So they feed back
Yeah.
everything that has happened into ChatGPT, and they are able to move much faster. So the rituals of let's first have an opening, and then 15 minutes of everyone feeling open and transparent and accepted, etc. The standard retrospective pattern, they take about 2 hours or something like that, and there are many different ceremonies for that. Well, it's great that we had that, but how can we speed that up? How can we do that faster? Maybe AIs can help us there, and also with other things that we do, whether you like estimation or not, but ChatGPT or other AIs can help you with forecasting based on the work that you have done before. So maybe you can reduce that waste of estimating the size of work from a 2-hour conversation to a 2-minute chat with with the AI.
Yeah.
Well, then it's much less. Then it might actually have some value if you are able to reduce it to that amount of time. So the practices are changing, and I think that's a good thing. And also the way we behave in our jobs is changing. I like the insight that we're moving from being specialists to being generalists. Or actually, the term T-skilled people has always been a big thing in the Agile world. Some call them generalizing specialists. You're a specialist first, but you branch out into other areas so you can take over. Well, that is being flipped on its head. We should be generalists first now, with temporary specializations in the areas where AI hasn't taken over yet. And the halftime of knowledge keeps shrinking. As I just said, prompt engineering existed for a year. Nobody's doing SEO anymore. SEO is dead. Another thing that's dead, by the way, search engine optimization, dead, because people stop using search engines and start asking their questions to AI. So good luck with your optimization of your blog posts and web pages, but that's not how people find your website anymore. So that job also behind us. And that means we have to again and again move on to the next specialization. Learn a new skill or a set of skills for a while so we can make a difference there until AI has caught up, can do that for us. Okay, great. Then we can learn something else again. So the idea of the lifelong learner becomes even more important. That concept has been around for a while, but I think it is even more important now that AI is steadily creeping into our territories, and we have to flee in other directions to find other things to do. So that means we need to be generalists first, being able to adapt to other domains and make a difference there, and then wait for the AI to catch up, and then we move on and do something else. And that is I think a Red Queen race that we're running.
Oh yeah, I'm really curious what's going to happen there. I have my thoughts, but I want to go to Jim first because I'm going to be your proxy voice today, Jim, as a lack for us being able to hear you. So let's see. The framework is not the point. The outcome is the point. But isn't that the any way of getting to the outcome, a process or a framework?
I have difficulty understanding the question exactly, but you're right, of course, Jim. We aim for outcomes, for end results, but our focus has in the Agile community has very much been on the how, the practices. And as I said, even in the Agile Manifesto itself, on the second page, it says we aim to satisfy customers through continuous delivery. This is already an how. This is a process. And I just released a novel. I may be allowed to mention that.
Definitely, by all means.
2 months ago. As a novelist, I know that this doesn't work as a novelist because you have to iterate on the entire scope of your story again and again and again and again until you have finished, have a story that is really, really good, and then you can release your novel. Well, some novelists have tried it in a chapter by chapter manner, like for example, Andy Weir with the Martian, and Hugh Howey with Silo. But that was because they were starting out. They needed fast feedback on their writing. They built up a following, but they switched. They switched for their later books to the more conventional approach of producing a whole book at the same time and not delivering individual chapters. Why? Because I know from experience that it is incredibly hard to write a complex plot. If you have already delivered earlier chapters, you cannot decide by chapter 18 that, oh, wait a minute, it is better if I kill the father instead of the mother in chapter 3, because that would be much better for the plot twist at the end. Well, good luck. The chapter was already released. So it makes your story weaker if you do that. And ultimately, it's about the outcome. Jim, you're right about that. It's about the experience that we're trying to deliver. So the value is still there. We need to offer great customer experiences, hopefully in collaboration with customers. But the advice to increment things or deliver things incrementally, that is, shall I say, rather dogmatic process advice that we had in the Agile community that does not always ring true in other domains. It doesn't ring true in movies, for example. It's also not true for most game design, by the way, because there's only one chance to make a good impression in the games industry, as we just saw last week with a latest Sony release. It completely blew up. And they hurt themselves releasing something that was clearly not good enough. And that's, then it's all lost. You can flush that investment down the
Mostly.
down the drain.
Cyberpunk was one of those exceptions where they initially built a shit game. At least it was full of bugs and technical debt and I don't know whatnot. And then they reiterated, and a couple of releases later, it finally got to a point where it's actually very enjoyable by the players, and now it's in a good state.
Right,
But
that's the exception to the rule. In general, iteration, for sure, they iterate a lot in the games industry, also in the movies industry, because I think games are actually better comparable to movies in terms of their production than to business software. So iteration for sure, and I call it agile too. I mean, the aim, the outcome, the goal is a great customer experience, and for that we need to iterate, and we don't release any part of the story before we know it is excellent. So coming back to the question, we have to develop those frameworks and methods for ourselves with patterns and practices that we borrow from various places. We have to devise our own ways of working. I like that term nowadays, maybe better than frameworks and methods, because we're aiming for an outcome, which is happy customers.
Hopefully that answers your question as well, Jim. That kind of satisfied it. Let's check out, because there are more comments coming from you, but also in our chat. You've been a generalist for 27 years? You look like you're 27.
Was that to me or to you? Was on
both? Let's stick to both. Let me rephrase it like this. I'm tired of hearing people say that the focus on the how isn't valuable. You just need to love the outcome journey. And then when you say, cool, help us to get to the outcome, that person, they suggest their process, ways of working, model, insert their synonymous term here, which is interesting.
Yep.
And I think it's very interesting now what you see now is going on. At least my perception of the whole Agile screaming is that people have been preaching that people need to be either generalists or specialists, but these people that are preaching this are now such Agile specialists that they are not able to adapt to different circumstances. Now they made themselves so niche, it's really hard to adapt to a new area of development. And I think that's one of the downsides of working in our field. We have to continuously be able to adapt to everything. Like if you were a carpenter 60 years ago, you were done for life. You could be a carpenter forever, pretty much. And we continuously have to adapt to changing circumstances, which is interesting. I think it keeps you on the tip of your toes as well. And you have to embrace that change constantly, which is interesting because we preach that. But it's also super hard to do when it comes to changing careers and that stuff. Yep. So I think with AI, I think the world itself is outpacing our mental capabilities.
Yeah, but also offering new opportunities and flipping business models and the environment on its head. To give you an example, I'm from. I began using writing blogs long before there was even social media. I mean, my blog was from 2008. Before my first book, blogging was a big thing back then. You had your own website, your own page, and so on. And then it was a matter of getting people to your blog. Blog is not a thing anymore. There are platforms. You either write on LinkedIn or on Medium or whatever. And now, because of AI, there's so much crap being produced, so much standard stuff, and some of that is actually useful because it teaches you how to use a webcam or whatever. So
Sure.
yeah, no problem if that is AI generated. It's about the result and not about the pros. But actually, this has a consequence for writers as well, because with platforms such as Substack, for example, I think they benefit from the fact that there is AI, because there's now a greater need for authentic, human, high quality writing. And I have actually subscribed to a couple of Substacks, because I know there's a person behind it, with a unique voice, with a slightly controversial opinion, perhaps, but something that I stand behind, and I want to read what that person writes once per week. And I pay for that. I would never have imagined paying for a blog 10, 15, 20 years ago, because you couldn't. But now there's so much crap that people are willing to pay for that which is high quality. That's a very interesting development. And you see that with other kinds of artisanal products, where anything that comes out of a factory is practically worth nothing. But what has been handcrafted by an artist, we pay premium price for that, even though it looks a bit clunky and uneven and so on. We know that someone put their blood, sweat, and tears in that product. And the same for writers or other creatives. So I don't see that necessarily as a bad thing. There are other revenue models possible these days.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that we're not there yet, but I think people will suffer from AI fatigue. And you see more and more of AI watermarks popping up and along these lines. And I think the authenticity is what we need. That's also the same with controversial opinions. I know you sometimes have a controversial opinion.
I try to,
Yeah. I mean, look at you and Dave Snowden. It's always fun to follow that along. But I think we wouldn't be anywhere without controversy. It's the same with how capitalism works. It's with competition, right? We cannot have a capitalist or a growth mindset in that sense if we don't have any competition. If you go into opinion convergence, I think it's going to be a very scary place, because then you go into a hive mind. And now we're drifting into an existential discussion, but I think that's a scary place to be in as well. So I think we need to have these controversial opinions to continuously progress and to keep a diverse mindset and divergence of perspectives. Now, coming back to your statement that you're one of the first bloggers, or you were blogging very early, somewhere it said that you have an imaginary hamster. What's that about?
Oh, George, I'm afraid I lost George along the way.
What's going on there?
It was just a joke in my bio in the very beginning. I have an imaginary hamster called George. I mean, that's just
Still there.
It's typically me. But at some point, I lost that in my bio, and I didn't realize until after a while people started asking, "Where's George?" And I was like, at first I didn't even know what they were talking about, and then they were talking, "Oh, the hamster. Oh, shit, yeah."
Someone told me that the other day, and I checked it out, and it's still somewhere there. So
Okay,
that,
George is still alive. I'm glad to hear that.
let me check the chat in the meanwhile if there are any questions. Mostly comments about the cars that we need, whether we do need to deliver half a car. Do we actually need a car? Cyberpunk is cool. So that's good. Coming back to the topic itself, how do we need to handle this crisis? So what do people actually need to do in order to keep mental sanity? But what's next? I mean, we just had a massive transition from other second careers, from people going from, for instance, teachers. There were a lot of teachers that converted to Scrum Masters. Now all of these people are fucked as well because of the layoffs, because of Agile's dead, and so on and so on. Now what? How can they apply? What can they apply is a better question.
Well, just learn new skills. I am at the moment learning to be a video editor. I always hated making videos. Really, I tried a couple of times in the last 10 years. I hate it. I hate making my own videos. It's such a pain to do video editing because the files are too large, and then they are the wrong
Yeah.
formats, and my God, and then the sound is bad, and there's so many problems. I just gave up. But now, thanks to AI, all these things that I hated, one by one, they're being killed off. So bad sound, the wind that was recorded with your smartphone, it became deleted. The ums and the pauses and the stupid things you said, with the click of a button, you can edit it out of the script, and then the film is adapted in sync. And all these things that I hated about it, they're disappearing. So the good stuff remains. And so yeah, I see myself maybe making videos again pretty soon. So I'm learning how that works nowadays with the new tools. I adapt. I learn new stuff, and whether it's video editing or writing a novel or whatever. I mean, I had never written a novel before. For the last 4 years, I did nothing but learning what are the plot structures and what are the standard approaches of authors, of how they go about writing a novel. And guess what? There are plenty of frameworks and methods in the
100%.
writing community too. So I picked one, the 15 Beats of Blake Snyder, also called Save the Cat, and it worked marvelously. And now with the next book, I'm thinking, I think I'm going to make my own framework, perhaps. We'll do a bit of borrowing from various frameworks and mix and adapt, because now I'm not a novice anymore. I've done my first one. With the second one, I think I'm now a journeyman. So I can make my own approach. So yeah, whatever it is, I keep learning. I'm on this path as a continuous learner. And there where the AIs take over, I take my hands off. Like, I like making PowerPoint presentations. Sorry, people, I like doing that. And I'm actually freaking good at making PowerPoints. But no need anymore. Because I can make much better slides with DALL-E and Midjourney and the other Gen AIs. And it costs me much less time. Okay, so that's a skill that I throw over my shoulder. It was nice having done that. I use the time that becomes available to me to do something else. And that's an attitude. That's a mindset, the growth mindset. You just said it. Yeah, try anything that you might like, that you may have hated in the past, but things could have changed, as I see with video editing. It's now much easier and more fun to make videos.
Yeah.
So
Question from Jim: what kind of specific skills should people learn? Because sticking to the video editing, for instance, I forgot the producer's name, but there's a Hollywood producer that initiated $800 million dollar investment in a new production studio, and then he saw Sora, the tool from OpenAI, and he's like, "Fuck this! I'm not doing that." We just wait a bit, and then we have the perfect tool to create all this stuff with a click of a button, rather than learning and developing and do this stuff ourselves. So, what kind of specific skills do you think people should learn?
I don't know if it's the skill of learning itself, the skill of exploring, because we don't know what things will look like next year. I mean, I just heard of the $1 billion investments in Ilya Sutskever and Elon Musk with his Colossus
Yeah.
park that he's trying to set up, and so on. So there's going to be big things coming our way, and we have no good idea what impact that is going to have on our ways of working. So keep our options open, learn various things, and just learn how to learn. Make it part of your week. I have it as one of my tasks every month. I have this list of tools that I would like to dig into, that I want to learn more about. And every month I do my I set priorities for the next month, things that I want to set as an objective, sort of personal OKR-ish kind of thing, you could say. And digging into one or two tools is always part of that, because I want to know how that can have an impact on my ways of working, whether it is automation tools like Make or Zapier or video editing, and in this case, as I just told you. It's a mindset, it's an attitude. So the skill is making it part of your daily work.
Do you think that the whole Shuari principle should apply there as well? Like we should try to build our own framework. Let's try to figure out how we learn and where we can apply that in order to figure out what we should do next. Because these people still have jobs and bills to pay, right? So they need to figure something out. So I want to make this as practical and pragmatic as possible, so people can really take this home and make it very specific.
Yeah, I'll give you a concrete example. I made it a habit of mine to watch a number of YouTube channels on an almost daily basis, just to see what comes by, to see what is happening in the world of AI, productivity tools, and so on. And 2 days ago, I was struggling with articles that I read, taking notes from specific articles, and then storing them in note-taking tools. And I've tried all of them. I tried Notion, I tried Evernote, I tried Nimbus, I tried Roam, and nothing was good for me. And then I watched a video yesterday during lunch, and another tool was offered. I think it was called My Mind or whatever. So I made a note of it. I'm going to install it tomorrow, because that seems to solve my problem. Of just reading an article and thinking, this needs to go into my mind, but not the biological wet one. I want it in my digital mind, so I can search for it with an AI tool. That is exactly the use case that they have solved. I would not have found that tool if I had not made it a daily habit for me to just see what has come out, what is happening in the world of AI and tools. So I made continuous improvement part of my daily work, and that is the skill I think that needs even more emphasis now than in the past.
I'm gonna go jump back to Jim here. Big companies don't want to pay for someone to learn on their dime or develop those skills, but they also want value. They also value people who can do many things. So basically, they want to have people that can do many things, but they don't want to invest in their development. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I see it. What can we do?
What do you think?
Well,
What's your thought about it?
I think organizations should invest to some extent in the upskilling of their employees if they want to retain them. But it is also a job of the professional to make sure that they are employable, and that they keep up with what is going on out there, without waiting for the employer to offer a personal development budget or whatever. I mean, there's so much you can read and watch for free online, or some things cost just $10-20 an online course on Udemy or whatever. Just do it yourself. I mean, why wait for your employer to do that for you? I think that's a bit of laziness. It means you don't really take your own employability serious. So it's both ways. And I think we should not rely on either partner to take on that important job all by themselves.
No, I would agree with that, and we had a very interesting conversation about that. Jim had a conversation with Jeff Gothelf on Forever Employable, and it kind of ties in what you're saying. You should invest in your own career, your own development as well, to ensure that you're indeed forever employable. So that's I would like to agree with that statement as well. It's not just your employer who needs to invest in you. Ultimately, it's an investment in yourself and your long-term career, making sure that you actually have something to fall back on. And maybe it's not necessarily the actual hands-on skill, but it's just training your brain to adapt to different circumstances. Even if you don't have the work, if you're laid off, then at least you can adapt or find something else. Because I'm honestly convinced that in these complex domains, and people who are working in knowledgeable domains and knowledge workers, they can find work or they can create something that is profitable for them, that pays their bills, but they need the right mindset for that. They clearly have the mental capacity, because else they wouldn't be in the field that they are in. But you need to apply and put that to practice as well. And I think, especially given all the tools that we have, whether that's Substack, you can make money of Substack. You can do that from the couch while binging Netflix. The same with Medium or making videos. everyone can make money out of something. You just need to find and put in the work. And then, of course, there's luck and some level of skills, etc. needed, but you need to really apply that. And I think that the chances are abundant to do so in the world that we live in.
True. On the other hand, you need to find something where you can be among the 1%, because 99% does not make money on Substack. 99% of authors does not make money on their books, and they were working on it for years. And I mean, I just released mine. It's going to take a long time before that I get my investment back. I can tell you. And there's always in every domain, in every creative domain, there's a small percentage of people who actually make money with that thing that they're doing, and the rest, the other 99%, are wannabes and hopefuls, and they won't get there. So you have to be smart about what you choose. Where can I make a difference, and where can I invest so much time and effort that I can get to that 1%. And yeah, that's maybe an ikigai exercise that every person has to do for themselves.
I think 1% is one of those statements as well that I think is very interesting, because I always see people, especially on Instagram, you want to be part of the 1% of the world, then be part of the super rich. You know what the 1% is in salary in the world? The percentage, or the level, the threshold of being in the 1% is $35,000 a year. That's your salary. Then you're in the 1%, because all the 99 other percentage, they earn less than 35,000. So I don't even think that 1% is what people think it is. But again, it's really about the mindset that's truly behind it. I think we're blessed in this part of the world that we have. The fact that we have a virtual audience now, that Jim is joining us from the other side of the world, I think that is already very compelling how good we actually have it. So, of course, things suck. Of course, the whole Agile is dead thing is scary for people. But I think that this creates a lot of opportunities as well.
I always say never waste a good crisis.
Exactly my words.
I mean, I find it scary sometimes, and I'm a little anxious every now and then, because for sure I see it in the number of conference invitations. If there are fewer conferences, I get fewer invites. Duh.
Yeah.
And that is obvious. Fewer people attending workshops. I discuss it all the time with facilitators and partners that I work with. So okay, fine. Things are changing. We have to change our business models in various ways. So that is anxiety inducing sometimes. Well, fortunately, I'm not the kind of person who lies awake at night. There's no need for that yet. But also I find it exciting, because it means, okay, cool, there's something else that we can try, because I tend to get bored when things work for too long. Then I also get lazy, and yeah, I stop enjoying the work, because apparently things are going fine. So why bother investing in myself? But when a situation like this comes up, revenue shrinking, opportunities declining, and so on, that is a good boost.
Yeah.
To pick up your lifelong learning. And yeah, it's creative disruption at at play here.
Yeah, it's not just creative disruption; it's also complacency. I think that's one of the biggest, because what you're saying here, what you're stating here, is what these large companies do in a very large scale as well. The corporate complacency that's incredibly dangerous to both their revenue, but also to their workforce. And if they become lazy, if you have a dominant position and you stay in that just because, well, you can, there's no burning platform, you become very arrogant because you hold the market anyway, or you're very big and you keep leaning on it. Ultimately, your place will burn. And like you see with wildfires, when something has burned down, it also creates a very fruitful soil to build on top of for other people, or for new wildlife, or whatever parallel that you want to take. But it's the same with these companies. If people are being laid off, they will start to create something new, right? And my hope is that we'll see smaller but more disruptive companies to push the boundaries of technology, but also to help other people still find a job. And I think that making things practical, that would maybe be my advice, to see what you can do to create something for yourself, to challenge yourself, but also to tackle these very large conglomerates. And I've had a couple of nice conversations about this with Jim. Who's the the competition for these large organizations. For instance, let's take Accenture. If we would ask Accenture, who's your biggest competitor, it would be either Deloitte or all the other large top 5 consultancies. But it's actually the very small players, because they start feeding off on the smaller companies that these large companies don't want to work with, and then they build their own empire, and then you start the disruption.
I would say it's LLMs.
Yeah, exactly. that too, in the hands of the smaller players, and then you continue to build that. I think that's something that's being undervalued way too much.
Yeah.
Do you think, in that sense, looking at handling the agile crisis, do you think the very large conglomerate organization will still have its place in the future?
Probably, but hopefully differently structured. There is an evolutionary benefit to being large, but at the same time, the pressure in a fast-changing environment is to shrink, is to downsize. I always use the analogy, the metaphor from biological ecosystems. When the environment is stable, there is an advantage to being large for species. So then you see species growing larger animals, because larger animals can fight for better food, more mates, and so on. The downside is that large animals have slow reproduction cycles. So they are slower to adapt to a changing environment. So when something happens, like a comet struck the Earth or whatever, climate change, then the small animals have an advantage, because they have more generations per decade of adaptation. And the big ones die out because they cannot change fast enough. Well, the exact same thing plays out in economic systems. When there is stability for a couple of decades in the world, then large animals tend to large companies tend to have the benefit, because they can hoard resources, they can hoard power, and so on. But they're slower to change, as we have seen in the agile community. I mean, that's the whole point of the agile thought leaders coming together. So there's a benefit to being small, being many small things. Be like a hive, be like a swarm instead of an elephant. So that, I think, is going to happen more. And you see organizations, see holding companies with 300 small companies that are all owned by the same small centralized company, but all those 300 little companies are very much autonomous, and they can do to a large extent whatever they want, and they operate together in an ecosystem that is basically a market, an internal market. We see that with Hire, for example, the Chinese company that I often use as an example. They have only 2 layers of management, and they're 80,000 people with only 2 layers of management. Can you believe that? It's amazing. Why? Because they're 4,000 self-organizing autonomous units that can decide for themselves whether they want to make computers or fridges or handkerchiefs. It's up to them. So that's a market that we're going to see more often, I think, if it remains true that the pace of change keeps accelerating. And I think for a while, because of AI, that is true. Then this pressure on organizations will just only increase and will make them flatter. But this is not forever. I mean, it could swing the other way. Maybe when the dust settles and we have AGI at some point, and humans have nothing left to do except entertain ourselves because the machines have taken over. I have no idea. Then yeah, we could enter into a stable period for a while, and then the large organizations would benefit again, and you might see a reintroduction of hierarchies, etc., because power tends to consolidate and so on.
I think your words are being underpinned by what's going on with Volkswagen now. They had 16, they still have 16 layers of management.
Gosh.
But they have to save up $10 billion now. So for the first time in their almost 100 years of existence, they need to close down one of the biggest plants in Germany. So that kind of subscribes to the idea that you're mentioning here. Now, let me check. Where is it? Rebel Coder X in the chat says, I've had a burnout the past few years because I got sick of every employer and manager thinking they know better how to do my job. That's still a thing, right? And I think that's very interesting because we're always thinking about how we should empower our teams and the way that we develop our products. And um, this still seems to exist in this world where our managers know better than what we're supposed to do because they grow out of the well, because of the structure that we have. They need to go up, and they are now a manager, but they don't keep up with the actually changing environments. So what's your thought on that? What should they do with that?
I think I gave the answer already in my little book, How to Change the World, a long time ago. I mean, take it, leave it, or change it. Either you change the situation, that means you need to be an advocate for other ways of working and modern management and leadership in the organization and so on. Some people are able to do that. They are able to change the organization from the inside out. And yay to them. I've been one of those people when I was still employed. I was able to make a lot of changes. But at some point, I hit the wall. That I changed a lot of things, but I could not change everything. I could not change my CEO and his micromanagement behaviors and so on. So at some point, after 7 years, I was well, maybe after 5 years, I was like, okay, well, this is it. Apparently, this is how as far as I could get with my changes, and then just take it. Okay, enjoy what works. Just be the stoic in the organization. Some things are just the way they are. Accept it, because you're only unhappy when you are making a problem out of things that are not as you want them to be. Well, you can decide not to see them as a problem anymore. Just take it. If you don't want to do that anymore, and that was for me after 7 years, you leave it. You just quit. I mean, nobody forces you to keep working for an organization. Just go somewhere else, for God's sake. So take it, leave it, or change it. Those are the three options. And I hope people start with change it. And then after a while, they may just take it. And this is how far we can get. And then at some point, they will have to leave it and go to another place.
Yeah, I hope that will change along the lines as well. I see more maturity in product development, product management. And coming back to one of Jim's questions, what do you think the advanced intermediate levels of product management maturity would look like?
Gosh, I have no idea.
Shoot from the hip.
I do think that well, obviously AI is going to have an impact on everything. We are becoming more of coordinators and directors of teams that consist of both machines and people. And actually, we're downsizing in terms of team size. I think that is an interesting development. We saw for a while that teams got bigger and bigger because the complexity of products just kept increasing. You see what happened in the games industry. That was typical. Well, I'm so old, yes, that I remember games being produced by 1, 2, or maybe 3 people: a programmer, a sound, music engineer, and the graphics person. That was it on the Commodore 64. And nowadays we have teams, quote unquote, of 100 or more people making one game. It's just unimaginable. But thanks to AI, you said it before, lots of layoffs in the games industry and elsewhere. Computers are replacing jobs of creatives. The teams are getting smaller again, and we will have blended teams of machines and humans, and we increasingly become the directors of an orchestra of a few people and many robots. And I envision at some point, you know, the sci-fi series of Star Wars or Star Trek and so on. In the Mandalorian, there's this place where there's a woman who is managing her the workplace where the spacecraft are being repaired, and her only employees are robots and androids.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, we're going in that direction where she just goes around as a director. Checking on their work and giving instructions, and then sipping a coffee or whatever. It is a bit an extreme example, but I think, yeah, we will see more of that, especially I think for product managers, where some of the people are being replaced by algorithms, and it means that resources are freed up for other kinds of work. And those people who are being laid off, they will find other work elsewhere. I'm pretty sure that is not the same as it was, but it might be even more interesting. I don't know.
No, I think it does have to do. I think with thinking in options, the other things that you could do, and I think personally, people don't think too often about their own happiness. They don't value their happiness enough. And as Jim says, per Jerry Weinberg, the happiest people are those who can see a problem and ignore it consciously. I think it's a beautiful statement. So thank you for sharing that, Jim. One
Yeah,
of
it resonates with one of my favorite sayings is all problems disappear if you just ignore them long enough.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Lawrence Bono always says if there's a problem, give people enough time and they'll figure it out themselves. So I like that statement as well. What I'm personally afraid of, or what I'm not necessarily afraid of, what I ponder about with these LLMs, they're being fed by what the information that's available, right? And if we now they're reliant on us as species, as humans, as we chug in more. But at a certain point, I can imagine that there's a information convergence because there is so much of the same type of request that at a certain point everything will converge into the same type of answer. Do you feel like there will be singularity in the products that we'll be making? And I see a very big question mark in your face.
Yeah, I don't believe that there's a convergence in the answers because the amount of data just keeps increasing. That also means that you can generate completely different data answers from the same data. What I do see, and this is a problem apparently in the industry, the fear or the problem of model collapse, where the AIs are being trained on the data that they themselves generated with the previous model, because they absorb all that content on the web, and an increasing percentage of that was created by a previous version of the same AIs. And scientists have shown that this could very well lead to model collapse, that you get worse and worse answers over time. It's just a feedback cycle. We know all about that in sound engineering. This is a terrible thing to have, a feedback cycle. And also apparently in LLMs. I don't know if they're going to solve that problem. I'm not a scientist or an AI developer by any means. But this is a problem that they need to work on. And also, I don't believe that further investments in the current generation of LLMs is going to lead to AGI. There's the law of diminishing returns is already playing out now. More and more microchips will not lead linearly to better and better answers. And we need something else, because the AIs are very, very good at bullshitting us with believable answers. That's what they do. They do pattern matching. That is the technology. It's just super advanced pattern matchers and pattern generators. And we humans love patterns because we see patterns everywhere. So that's why we like also the answers that they generate. There's nothing in there that says what is true or false. That is, some people call that a flaw of the model. It's not a flaw. That's not what the technology is for, to decide what is true or false. So I had a discussion with my husband a few days ago. He was trying to generate a plane with 4 engines in ChatGPT, and he couldn't. I said, "Is this forbidden or somehow or something?" It's just and I said, "It can't count. It's just that's not what it does. It doesn't know what 2 and 4 is." It's just generating planes based on patterns and trying to match your question with potential answers that you might like. So calculations and math and reasoning and so on is not covered by LLMs. We need something else to be able to get better answers in the future.
Do you think then the AI is a bubble that's going to collapse at some point? If there's indeed the law of diminishing answers, the quality is going to go down. That means that the quality of our work is going to go down if we're increasingly more lenient and receptive to the answers of these LLMs.
Well, I think I've seen plenty of benefits of LLMs already. I'd replace my search engine just today. The Google search bar, I replace it with Perplexity because I like the answers much better that the LLMs offer. So sorry, Google, no more ads for me that you can serve up. And this is a real use case. This is really beneficial. As I said, I can make better illustrations for my PowerPoint presentation. This is a simple use case. This is not what they invested billions of dollars for, of course, for making more prettier PowerPoint presentations, but it is a
Yeah.
valid use case.
Sure. Yeah.
And also creating copyright free music for your stupid videos on YouTube. Yeah, some people are prepared to pay for that. That's what AI can do. Because in the past we didn't have music, or we had to pay real artists, but well, we didn't because we didn't want to spend the money. So no music then, or we cheated and used copyrighted music, and hopefully nobody notices. So it's not like someone lost a job there. Um, uh, so there are plenty of use cases where generative AI is really making a difference. And also for me as a writer, um, I I wrote my novel in 15, 20 iterations. I think by the time I got to iteration 15, I had the complete novel basically ready. I only had to tweak the prose, make all the sentences more beautiful. And then ChatGPT appeared. So I was not able to use LLMs in the earlier phases of the project. But it was immediately useful because I fed every scene into ChatGPT and I asked it, how would you improve this? Improve the prose, make it more beautiful. And then I checked every sentence that it changed, every word, every suggestion, and I copy pasted literally. It was a lot of work
I can
to
imagine.
copy paste what I agreed with. So I did not let ChatGPT write my novel. I use it as a cheap editor
Yeah,
and
it's the augmentation.
advisor. Yeah. So it was a thesaurus on steroids, a copy editor on steroids. It was also good because I still went to a copy editor later, but that person said, "Wow, this is high quality stuff. That saves me time." And then he could spend more time on the serious things instead of the stupid things that ChatGPT had already helped me with to get rid of. So, but with my next novel, I'm going to use it from day one. I'm going to ask it to give me feedback on the plot twists. I'm going to ask it to give me feedback on the character descriptions, and I'm not going to let it write everything because that's what I want to do. I want to do the writing, but I'm going to delegate
Yeah.
some of the stuff that I would have others do, or I would just have it help me increase the quality of my writing. And there's some crappy work that you can delegate. Like, yeah, I have received requests to answer interview questions for blog posts, promotional stuff, and so on. Sure. So I quickly write out some draft questions. I have a Jurgen literary assistant in ChatGPT as one of my GPTs that is able to write like I do, and then I let it rewrite my notes in my voice. Done. Nobody cares. I mean, this is not supposed to be high quality prose. It is supposed to sound like me. It is my answers to the questions, so they're honestly my answers. But I save an hour of work on that particular interview. So plenty of use cases where LLMs now make a difference. But as I said, all those use cases combined is not what the industry paid billions of dollars for, because the real difference, surveys have shown that organizations are a bit disappointed about the impact that LLMs are having in their companies, because it is all this little stuff that the LLMs can help.
Yeah, I think many of these organizations are already in their minds in the minority report mindset, while they're still throwing sticks and bones out there with these AI tools. They're still in their baby shoes. So I think they're overestimating the power of what it actually can do versus what they think that it can do. And I understand what you're saying about the tools being an augmentation, because my book together with Brian Brook is going to be released December 1st, and the first it took us 2.5 years to create that thing because of many different reasons. But initially we did it without any tools, like the first year and a half, and then I invested in a tool to help me rewrite the style of the sentence, get rid of redundancies and those kind of things, and it creates so much clearer sentences. And now I did that for the entire book. We sent it to a manual editor to just go over and see what they can do. And today we received the feedback like it's so exceptionally clean. I don't have to do anything apart from do some proofreading, and that's it. It really is an augmentation to the ways of delivery, and I think that is how leading this back to product development, how people can handle the agile crisis is use these new opportunities to create an augmentation in their own ways of development. And if we then go back to, for instance, the core of Scrum is to create focus, also in these Scrum events, of what you were saying at the beginning of this discussion, is now we can create more focus to actually either diminish the time that we need for certain events, but also therefore create more time to actually focus on delivery of value. And I think that is something that we don't talk enough about.
Yep.
What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And I heard some super interesting use cases for AIs that I have not seen in practice yet myself, but I definitely can expect to happen, or maybe already are playing out somewhere. Like, for example, instead of waiting for a customer to be available to review your product demo and give feedback on it, and then you have the feedback from one person, why not offer it to 10,000 agents generated by AI that mimic the behaviors of typical people among your customers, and let them, those agents, digital agents, give you feedback on what works or what not. You will have it in minutes instead of waiting for next Thursday afternoon when that one customer is available. That could significantly speed up development, and it would already, as with writing, get rid of all the problems that the machines were able to find. So you can give something that is cleaner, that is better to the customer for that final review, where you need the real human to have that to do that final pass. And that person will not waste their time with the silly mistakes that the machines could have found for you. So this is one concrete example where I think, things will be speeding up, and the standard definitions of how we approach agile. So we're coming back to the beginning, basically, how versus the the outcome. The how is going to change. There's maybe no need anymore for a 2 or 3 weekly retrospective of 2 hours. There's maybe no need anymore for a weekly conversation with a customer that takes an hour, or maybe we can do the once per month. And in the other iterations, if we still have iterations, we just chat with the machines. And it will be much faster. And Henrik Nieberg posited that there may not be sprints at all anymore, because the cycles keep shrinking, so that the sprints that were 1 week, from 2 weeks to 1 week, will maybe end up being 1 day. So we do the whole Scrum cycle in 1 day with machines. I find that super interesting.
It is, and again, yesterday we had a conversation with Chris Jones, and he feels like Marty Kagan and many of the Silicon Valley product group people, that we don't even need sprints. Like, it's a continuous process. And like what Jim said, the investigation aspect of things may get easier, or not may, it is already still, but it requires a human to verify, as it's very prone to errors. Let's just eliminate the whole concept of weeks and months and antiquated Gregorian bullshit. Thanks for the addition, dude.
Yes, yeah, good point.
No, but it is interesting. Like, at a certain point, we don't need those cycles indeed anymore, because it's just constant discovery, validation, and immediate development. Because on the click of a button, we can have what we need based on the patterns that we create ourselves together with our stakeholders. But if we have a stakeholder feeding, or a user feeding that pattern, or the LLM with their own behavior of usage, then we can create these mimics, these personas that automate their own behavior, and therefore make it very specific what we can deliver.
Yeah.
How far do you think in the future that is, before we actually really reach that point that this is going to be very adaptable, usable?
I'm not able to pinpoint one specific year or whatever. I mean, we already see LLMs being used to create agents that mimic people for certain kinds of behaviors. I mean, I already have a digital version of me as a writer that is able to write blog posts in my style and interview questions. So this is already happening, and so it is easy to make that 10,000 instead of one, and automated with 10,000 different writers like me, and then you have your crowd of writers that maybe you could deploy to see what kind of stuff is being written, and to test text editors, for example. I mean, if you create a product for people such as me, you need customers such as me writing text and trying to work with your product. Well, you can automate me. I already have an automated version of me. Just use that one.
Yeah.
So this is already happening. The question is to what extent. I mean, clearly, this is digital work. That writing is the easiest thing. Is just text. That's what LLMs are good at. A step more difficult is pixels, images, and then 2D and even 3D. But then that still is the digital domain, and the next level is the physical world. A copy of me isn't there yet, thank God. But at some point, maybe they will be there, and you might have androids acting as potential customers to see whether a physical product works or not. Something that you would give to a human, like, okay, how would you try and open this, just to see if they understand the instructions, or how would you get this to work? Maybe in the future we give that to machines to get the simplest bugs out.
That actually may be closer by in the future than we think, because now that we're talking about your digital version, there's also a digital version of me and Lawrence and the other colleagues that where you're sitting now. We were recording with a tool called Hey Gen, and they record our physical
I've
body,
used it.
voice.
Yeah.
It's insane what they can deliver.
Yeah.
But actually, like the most impressive thing that I felt about that tool is actually folds the clothes while the digital avatar is moving, so it's very lifelike. It's really insane the power that it can do. That can save trainers as well time. Here you have a virtual recording where you create a whole array of digital lessons. Of course, it's fairly costly still at this point, but I do see that's going to be the future where the costs are going to be reduced.
Yeah, but at the same time, I've used, I've played with HeyGen. I call it DigiMe, the one that I have, the version of me that I created. It was fun. I understood its appeal, but at the same time, I thought I don't want to watch videos with a fake person like that for hours on end. I want to see a real human giving me instructions. So I myself have decided against using HeyGen.
Sure.
And I am working on online learning videos. But we considered HeyGen. No, because ultimately that's the outcome again, Jim, you'll like that. It is about better user experiences. Is it a better user experience to watch a digital version of a person? My perception as a user would be that person is lazy. That person just wrote a script, fed it to a digital version of himself, and then pressed the button, and then went for a coffee, and then I have to watch that stupid video.
That's assuming that you would know that the user would know that this is AI.
Yeah, but this at this time is still pretty obvious. You can see that
to a certain degree.
So the question at what point do we get out of that uncanny valley? That we think something is off here, and it's very, very hard. We're not there yet by far. Even for instructional videos, you just see that this is AI generated, and that's fine for simple things like how do I operate this device for a 1-minute instruction. But I'm not going to watch a 5-hour online course with AI generated video. I'll pass. I'll get something that is human, has humans in front of a camera. So the question is, does it make for a better experience or not?
It depends.
At some point, we might get there.
There's a comment in the chat as well. Isn't this a question of ethics? And I think that's always a very interesting question, because throughout history, we've always been pushing boundaries, the ethical boundaries. And I think something that is happening currently that's most prevalent in that sense is Neuralink, right? The chips by the company of Elon Musk being implemented in people's brains. And now the second patient, whoever actually, the human patient who has received these things, he can now play, what's the game? A very old shooter, Counter-Strike, without using hands, just sitting still because he's a paraplegic. He can flawlessly play Counter-Strike without needing anything. So this is an ethical boundary as well. especially if you're going to connect those people to each other. Like there are two patients now, they ultimately want to help them communicate. And then you're going to push even more boundaries of ethics. Like that's going to create a hive mind, because now I can feed information into the system that may or not be true, but it's what those people think is actually true because that's what they're being fed. And those are very ethical boundaries that are very far away right now, but it will be at some point, it will be very relevant. But I think it's always a question of ethics being involved in these aspects. What do you think?
Yeah, but ethics are malleable and they change throughout the ages. I mean, seriously, we've had slavery for thousands of years in a large part of the world, and at some point, thank God, the world decided we don't do that anymore because all humans have fundamental rights. That was a new idea. That was revolutionary, and that was a change we went through. Something else. The original Olympics were done fully naked. Sadly, not anymore, because we have now decided that going around in the nude is apparently not accepted anymore. But there was a time where there was no issue whatsoever, apparently. So we change the boundaries of ethics all the time. It evolves. What is good or bad? Well, it's an interesting philosophical debate that maybe we should pass.
Yeah,
pass
that's
on.
what Jim mentions as well. There may
but-
be a difference here with ethics and morals, so you might be right there.
Yeah, so these boundary shifts. So yeah, what is ethical or not in terms of AI? Some people find it unethical. There's discussions about that also in the writers community, that AI is reading or observing all that content created by artists and then making something that looks very much like what those artists created. They find that unethical. I don't see the problem as long as you don't pass it off as something that was created by the original artist, because then you're a forger. Then you try to that's unethical to pretend that it was created by the original artist. But making something that looks like a Keith Haring painting, but it is not, and you don't claim it is, it's just in the style of. I don't see the point. I don't see what's unethical about it. But apparently some other people do, and these are discussions. This is the boundary shifting that is happening, and it will be interesting to see in which direction it goes, because AI is getting more powerful all the time. So it will be pushing up against notions of what is acceptable or not that maybe we didn't realize we had, because we were never in a position that we could have forgers of creative works of others create new works that look very much like the originals in an automated way by the millions that never existed.
Mm-hmm.
And now it is possible, and now we have to wonder, okay, on how does the coin fall? Is it acceptable or not? There will be plenty more of these debates. That will be interesting, I think.
Definitely. Looking at the time, I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Sure.
We're almost 90 minutes in. What does keep you up?
Oh gosh, what does keep me up? What do I do with the rest of my life? I just finished that 2-month vacation in the Caribbean. Super interesting. 18 countries I visited, 24 islands in 60 days. I cannot recommend it for everyone because sometimes it was a challenge.
It's high pace.
Yeah. But I like those kinds of challenges. But it really puts you in a position of being able to reflect on yourself. You're literally in another world, another place on earth, looking at what you're doing yourself, and then think, what the hell? Why is this so important? I was looking at people around me and I think, none of these people care about what I do. They don't care about agile frameworks or methods or pattern libraries or whatever. They're just going about their day, trying to make a living in their own way. And it was very sobering in a way. And it also helped me reflect on what do I want to do? Do I want to be involved in this agile thing or whatever we're going to call it in the future, or do I want to do something else? I do want to write novels, by the way, because that's always been my long-term ambition to be a novelist, but I don't think I can live off that. So I will need some other kind of income in the meantime. And I like public speaking. I hope there will be invites still in the next couple of years because I enjoy the travel and meeting people and so on. But if that dries up, what else? Those are good thoughts to have. So yeah, thinking about how am I going to spend the rest of my life because I hope I still have a couple of years ahead of me. That was keeping me busy in the last 2 months. Yeah.
Management 4.0 was suggested.
Oh yeah, well the domain has been reserved. Even Management 5.0, we reserved that one as well, just to be sure.
Well, the good thing about all this reflection, AI can't do that for you.
Exactly.
I think that's a great way to start wrapping up. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find your novel?
The novel is called Glitches of Gods. So just type Glitches of Gods. It is has been available on Amazon for 3 months. It is, as we speak, being released on Apple, Google, Kobo, and all the other platforms. So it should be available today, tomorrow, or within a couple of days once the review processes are done. My website, jurgenappelo.com, you'll find everything.
Nice. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you as well, Jim, sticking there.
Thanks, Jim.
With all your patience and not being able to hear you. Thank you so much for everyone being here in the live stream as well. Hope to see you
Thanks,
soon.
everyone. Thanks, Andrew.